Thanks, Ryan. Welcome to the Statewide 911 Advisory Board meeting for February 23rd, 2026. We'll start with a roll call. Michael Yoakley is present. Senator Neil Anderson. Senator Bill Cunningham. Representative Mike Coffey. Representative Angie Guerrero-Cuyar. Ralph Caldwell.
Present.
Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning.
Damon Dade.
Present.
Good morning, Damon. Laura Daly.
Sorry, present via WebEx.
Good morning, Laura. John Ferrara.
Present.
Morning, John.
Morning.
Tim Hightower.
Present, WebEx.
Good morning, Tim. Anthony Isla.
Morning. Present on the WebEx.
Good morning. Phil McCarty.
Present.
Morning, Phil. Sam McLaren.
Present. Springfield.
Morning, Sam.
Good morning.
Randy Narrett. Dino Perdue. Deb Piscola.
Present, WebEx. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Deb. Carla Red.
Present via WebEx. Good morning.
Good morning, Carla. Melinda Wolker.
Present.
And Linda Zerwin.
Present DuPage. Good morning.
Good morning, Linda. All right, we have a quorum. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the January 12th, 2026 meeting minutes. Were there any edits to the minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve, John Ferraro.
Thank you, John.
Second, Melinda Wolfer.
Thank you, Melinda. All in favor of approving the minutes from January 12th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Second item on our agenda is a legislative update. I did include a list of pieces of legislation for awareness. These are specific pieces of legislation that Alicia and I have performed a legislative review for our governmental affairs office, so wanted to make sure that I put them on everybody's radar. I don't have anything specific to speak to with regard to that. Anything that you wanted to discuss with the board on those?
No, I don't have anything.
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of them and make sure that you guys, that any of the board members didn't want to have any conversation about any of them. Okay. If there isn't any conversation about those pieces of legislation, the next item on our agenda is a financial update. The monthly financial report was distributed with the meeting materials. Ralph, you'll be happy to know that we've gotten our conference and registration costs under control.
Awesome.
So any comments, questions, concerns with the financial report?
Melinda, I just had a question about, there are two line items. The next to 911 was the network costs, and one is not network. Can you explain what those are?
I'm going to look to Sheila on this one.
On
The text to 911, one is network and one is not network.
yeah, some of them is the actual like network cost, and then some of them would be
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions with regard to the financial report? Hearing none, I will pass it over to Alicia for her update.
Thank you. Bear with me, everybody. I have a cough that doesn't seem to go away. Regarding NG 911 and EZNet, there's, with 8 cutovers remaining, we have 1 PSAP left. That is Northbrook. They are starting ORT testing this week, and they are scheduled to cut over next week. That will leave the 7 remaining ISP communication centers, which are scheduled for cutover in July and August of 2026. Regarding the redundant network connections, 49 sites are in production with diverse connections. 24 have been completed orders, 24 orders are currently active, and 3 orders are being worked on. In reference to text to 911, 102 PSAPs have received text-ready notices from Intrado, and 162 PSAPs are currently able to receive text to 911. We've gotten 1 more on board since we last met. The remaining 7 PSAPs have targeted text-ready cutovers with solution providers in the first half of 2026. I'll slow down in case there's any questions. Regarding grants, the grant window did close on February 2nd, and applications are currently being reviewed. And work continues on the telecommunicator and telecommunicator supervisor training and certification. The ongoing work to finalize the content is continuing. We did have a meeting with the group of training professionals to review the content thus far and discuss gathering additional training content needs, so media. We're talking about agency-specific pictures, videos, things like that that we can identify and have ready to go to incorporate into the LMS. The LMS procurement is continuing. We have finalized it with Do It input, completed the governance process, and we just received an initial review by the Chief Procurement Officer. In regards to SESA, implementation continues. Cohort 1 is continuing on. We now have 2 PSAPs live and actively transferring all levels of appropriate calls to 988. Cohort 2 held its kickoff meeting on January 29th. Cohort 2 includes 22 PSAPs, all of which are priority dispatch users, and we are now looking ahead. Cohort 3 will also be PSAPs that utilize priority dispatch as work continues to finalize the total response protocol. When it comes to cohort 4 through 6, we're going to use a hybrid approach. Spots will be opened up for PSAPs to sign up for which cohort they want to be a part of. The intention is to open up 50% of the available slots for those cohorts who want to schedule which cohort, those PSAPs that want to schedule which cohort they want to be a part of, and the remaining spots will be assigned. There's going to be more information forthcoming on that, both via email and the administrator's call, but also through the SESA statewide committee meeting structure.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if I understood that, sorry.
That's okay. I don't know if I explained it correctly.
No, you did. I'm sure you did. Believe me. Well, worried. So for cohorts 4 through 6, there'll be an opportunity for 50% of those slots to be volunteered for, and the other 50% then will be assigned.
Correct.
Okay, that's all.
If all of the available slots fill up, we may open more slots for people to assign. It's kind of one of those, I know one of the pilot agencies says they like to control their own fate. That's why they signed up for the pilots. We want to give people some input on when they implement, knowing that not everyone is going to have a preference.
I think that was me, I said.
I thought it was Brandon, but I'll give it to you. And so that way, if all the spots fill up and more people have preferences and want to sign up, we are open to opening more as well.
Okay, thank you.
And is this on a quarterly basis? And when does cohort 3?
It is not on a quarterly basis. So the legislative deadline is July 1st, 2027. The intention is to have all of the cohorts go live by the end of 2026. That will allow those 6 months of 2027 for agencies to continue all the technical assistance and implementation steps that they need to be in compliance with the deadline. Any other
The only thing I would say, we're pleased with the progress on the LMS procurement. The fact that we're through governance, the fact that the CPO has conducted a review. Soon we should know when it will be published. That publication of the presentation will give us a deadline for submissions, and that will begin to paint a very clear picture as to how soon we'll be under contract. So just to give everybody an idea of when that will kind of become clear, we'll know when the LMS will be identified, and then once we're under contract, that'll help us determine the schedule for exactly when we can expect to go live of that LMS system. If there are no other questions for Alicia on her update, the next item on our agenda is the strategic planning update. More specifically, ISI has put together the PowerPoint that was submitted with the board materials to all of you. A lot of feedback, a lot of good feedback. And we had a chance to review it with them last week. And I will say that very specifically, they asked me if I wanted to make any edits, and I very purposely did not make a single edit. I think it's only fair that the board see exactly everything that we received as we received it, so you can digest it, and it will help us formulate our plan as we move forward. I asked ISI to come here today and walk through that PowerPoint with the board. And so I'm going to turn this over to our ISI colleagues and allow them to walk through the PowerPoint. As we do that, I know that they will be very willing to take any and all questions. It's an extensive PowerPoint. I don't think there's any reason to hold questions as we move through things. Feel free to speak up and ask, and we can have all sorts of discussion as we walk through the process. But Seth, Bart, if you want to.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Seth Gaston from Illuminate Strategy, and so today we're going to go over the survey responses, and we put together a PowerPoint presentation.
Hey, Seth, really quick, do you want to come up here, just because I know that the WebEx folks are getting the audio from this, and then that way it will make sure that they can hear you clearly. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there a way for me to see what slide you're on the WebEx?
Yeah, just like this.
Okay, we'll go like that. All right, so first up we have the survey respondents. The survey was sent out to 307 contacts from the administrative 911 call, and out of those 307 contacts, we got 65 respondents, and that puts us at 21% response rate, which is quite typical of surveys. And so nearly half of the respondents, 45%, operated in dual roles, which means many of the center staff wear dual hats. And out of those, 28% were PSAP only, and 26% were ETSP and 911 system or network admin only. The next one is the survey respondents. And so 51% of the respondents made up PCs, made up of 11 to 25 people. And the next largest respondent group was at 26%. We had those representing TC staffing levels of 1 to 10. And so the smaller proportions represented centers with 26 to 50 staff, and centers with 51 to 100 represented 6%. And on the right, we can see a Sankey chart, and this is to illustrate what are the populations served per PC staffing level. And we can see that it's nonlinear, and that across the board, we have different PCs of various sizes representing different demographic groups. So that is not consistent. The next slide, we have geographic representations of our respondents. in the map legend, we have those PCs that represented both a PSAP and ETSP, so the dual responsibilities represent the green dots on the map. ETSP system only and network administration are represented with the red signal, and the PSAP only centers are represented in the black radio tower signal. And if we look at the map, we can see that overall representation was good. So we didn't just hear voices from one certain region, and it was quite diverse. So the next slide focuses on our approach. So just a quick recap on how we got here is we started our approach to the strategic plan by engaging the board and having conversations around strategic priorities, challenges, and any perceived challenges. And from those, we gathered strategic themes that formulated 55 questions that were included in the survey. And as we received feedback from all the respondents, we were able to collect very good data, which were qualitative and quantitative. And upon analysis of the data, we were able to analyze it, and we were able to distill 6 strategic themes that we will be going over today. And out of the 6 strategic themes,
Mr. Chair, we seem to have lost audio.
You have no audio coming through.
All right, DuPage, do we have you back?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Looks like back on the WebEx has audio as well. So
We have audio, but we missed nearly 100% of his presentation.
okay, thank you. We'll back up. Happy to do so. Yeah, let's just.
should we start from the top?
Yeah, let's just start from the top, because I'm not.
All right. Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be running over the survey respondents. So 65 responses out of 307 contacts were sent out. That puts us at a 21% survey response rate. And out of those responses, we had 45% of the respondents representing dual responsibilities, both PSAP and ETSPs or 911 system. 28% were PSAP only, and 26% represented ETSP, 911 system, or the network admin. The next slide, we saw that the largest proportion of the respondents made up 51%, about 52% made up of TCs, representing staffing levels of 11 to 25. Following that, at 27% about 26% representing TC staffing levels of 1 to 10. Followed that, 26 to 50 staffing level made up 15% of the respondents, and about 6% of the respondents made up of TC staffing levels, making up 51 to 100 staffing. And on the right side of this chart, we can see that across the board, the TCs representing population sizes are not consistent, and so across the board, they serve various communities of various sizes, so that is not consistent. Following that, the geographic representation of respondents was very diverse. We could see that in the map legend, both PSAP, ETSP 911 system representation, those dual responsibilities are marked in green. In red, we can see ETSP only, and in the dark radio signal, we can see the PSAP only representation. And so across Illinois, we got very good feedback across the state. On the next slide, we have covered our approach. And so a quick recap of how we got to this point is we started by engaging the board members, and we asked questions around priorities, challenges, and overall directions. And so from those interviews, we distilled 55 questions, and we collected feedback through the survey tool, and we were able to analyze it, and from those, we were able to distill 6 strategic themes. And out of those analysis of the questions, it included both quantitative, which included rankings, Likert, yes, no questions, as well as qualitative open-ended questions. The qualitative open-ended questions allowed us to really surface some of the feedback that we did not consider initially, and allowed us to surface those represented. And for the quantitative portion of the survey, we were able to ask how do we prioritize and rank the feedback. And so out of that analysis came out 6 themes that we're going to cover today. So the first theme we're going to focus on is strategic priorities and challenges. Now, these are core 911 stakeholders believe that the statewide plan should prioritize barriers standing in the way and how success should be measured. And this is how stakeholders define success for the strategic plan. The very first chart that we're going to look at is what would you like to see as top priorities for the Illinois 911 strategic plan? And what this chart shows us is this was a ranking question, and the very first choice that stood out is funding and sustainability seem to be a primary focus and a big priority. That was followed by workforce development, followed by infrastructure modernization, followed by GIS and location accuracy, as well as cybersecurity and resilience. Number 6 and 7 are the least priority. You can see that those 2 last ones are the last choice for me. On the next slide, we ask, are there any other priorities or opportunities you believe should be considered? Now, these are the open-ended questions that came up and give us a good overall representation. Now, throughout this presentation, there are a lot of open-ended questions that were summarized, and the way that we grouped them is what we did, we aggregated all the open-ended responses for that question, and we paraphrased and rolled it into best fit themes so that it's more digestible. So the first theme that we saw come up was around funding and sustainability. And those are some of the comments that are represented there. Michael, do we want to read over those, or?
I'll defer to the board on that. Do we want to go through the individual comments, or do we want to just discuss by topic area? What is the board's preference?
As long as the comments are what they are, I don't see any reason. I mean, we all can read.
Yeah.
I didn't mean you don't have any secret hidden information
No.
on the other side, so I don't think we
Yeah.
have to, unless one of us
Okay.
has questions.
Yeah, so if you have a question, just
Unless somebody feels.
bring it up and we'll discuss.
And the goal for the open-ended sections is to simply relay everything that was captured. So we didn't want to leave anything out, and in all of the themes, we wanted to relay everything that the respondents included in their responses. And we did get a lot of feedback and comments in the open-ended section. Some of them were very emotionally charged, a lot of passion behind them, and we just wanted to summarize and paraphrase it so that it also does not include any personally identifiable information. So the first theme was funding and sustainability. That was followed by workforce development and professionalization. We've gone to the next slide. The next theme included technology standards and interoperability. And next up, we had policies, SOPs, and operational standards. So across the board, a lot of requests for SOPs and operational standards. And next up was facilities and capital. And the last two themes included governance, consolidation, and culture. And lastly, scope of dispatcher role and non-911 tasks. Moving on to theme number 2, we have service quality and voice of the customer. Now, this theme revolves around how Illinois 911 professionals define what high quality looks like in regards to service. And a question around this was if we could get the perspective of the citizen experience and citizen interaction. And so this question that we can begin with is, please describe in general terms and without including any agency, incident, or personal identifying information, a recent 911 citizen experience that revealed an opportunity to improve the system. And so the first theme we got here is misrouted calls across jurisdictions. The second one is transfer failure between PSAP. The third is technology and system reliability issues. On the next slide, you have ineffective call handling and workforce, followed by 988 integration and mental health call handling issues, followed by public education gaps creating slowdowns. And the last one, the next slide, we have vendor capacity and quality problems, followed by structural and multi-agency coordination challenges. Following on the next slide, we have how do you define quality in your 911 operations? Again, this was an open-ended question, and we received a lot of different perspectives. However, we were able to roll it into 4 themes that were consistent across the board. The first theme was high-quality call handling, followed by high-quality dispatch, followed by high-quality technology and infrastructure, followed by high-quality workforce and continuous improvement. On the next slide, we have how would you define success for your organization? And in this chart, we had a Likert scale, which looked at multiple variables, including operational reliability, public safety outcomes, workforce health and retention, technology and innovation, community trust and accessibility, funding and sustainability, as well as governance and accountability. And across the board, we can see in the Likert scale that all of these variables are very important to the respondents. However, the most important that came out of it is operational reliability with 100% net important, and that includes people who selected very important or important. And so across the board, operational reliability was, in consensus, one of the most important success rates. That was followed by public safety outcomes at 97% net importance, followed by workforce health and retention at 95% importance, followed by funding and sustainability at 94% net importance, followed by technology and innovation at 89% importance, followed by community trust and accessibility at 86% net importance, and lastly, governance and accountability at 75% net importance. Next up, we had an open-ended question here. Are there any other success factors or measures of success you believe should be considered that were not listed in the variables above? And we got, across the board, some feedback, and we included them into 3 categories here. Number 1 is training access equity, and that includes training access, training especially downstate versus upstate, and that includes travel costs and availability. The second was local context being very important. Success metrics should account for differences in population, geography, and unique services each center provides. And the third is funding consideration. Mentions of surcharge increase and ensuring local control of spending. In the next slide, we have theme number 3, workforce training and leadership, recruitment and retention challenges, training needs and gaps, statewide training standards, and readiness. And so in this slide, we can see overall, we had several questions that involved the importance of training. What are the key themes, risks, or opportunities when it comes to the statewide training standards? And so several open-ended questions about training, including priorities, gaps, future concerns, were aggregated and analyzed together, and these comments were grouped into common themes. And from this process, 8 key training and workforce needs emerged. The first one we have is local flexibility, followed by access and equity, followed by staffing and time impact, followed by clarity and rollout, followed by avoiding overload and duplication, followed by testing and workforce, followed by content, quality, and up-to-date information. Followed that is funding and admin burden. The next question was another Likert scale and was asked, as Illinois adopts a statewide training standard, how important are the following training or workforce needs for your PSAP or 911 system? So again, we asked them to rate recruitment and retention, standard training and certification, technology and NG 911 skills, stress management and wellness, leadership and supervisory development, interagency coordination, public engagement and accessibility, 988 integration training. And across the board, we can see again, many respondents picked very high or high for this question. And the most, at the top, we have standardized training and certification with 81% net importance. Again, these are people who selected very high and high. That was followed by technology and NG 911 skills. That was rated at 79% net importance. That was followed by stress management and wellness with 77% net importance, followed by leadership and supervisory development with 77% as well. Recruitment and retention at 73% net importance, followed by interagency coordination, 988 integration training, and public engagement and accessibility. On the next slide, we have the statewide training priorities, and we were able to look at this by segmenting the data and looking at TC staffing levels to understand if different staffing levels would result in different training priorities. And what we see in this chart is that it does not vary much. The same priorities show up across all staffing levels: workforce, recruitment and retention, NG 911 skills, and leadership development are consistently at the top. And bigger centers rated this item at higher importance, likely due to complexity, but the pattern is statewide and consistent. Next up, we have theme number 4, funding, sustainability, and equity. So in this theme, we explore stakeholder perspectives on the current funding model, which is surcharge-based, equity and adequacy concerns, funding source diversity, and innovative ideas for sustainable support. The first question was, do you believe Illinois should adopt a different 911 strategy, funding strategy? And 68% of the respondents said yes, Illinois should adopt a different funding strategy. And 32% of the respondents believe no, Illinois should not adopt a different funding strategy. The next slide, we look at how significant are future 911 funding and sustainability challenges. And when it comes to viewing funding as a challenge, across the board, we can see very high was rated at 61%, followed by 24% high. So the majority of the respondents believe that funding is a major challenge, and only a small minority view funding pressure as moderate or low. So consensus is that this is a top-tier risk to 911 operations. The next slide we have, do current compensation and benefits enable you to hire and retain sufficient qualified telecommunicators in your region? And in this question, we were able to see that most centers say that pay is sufficient, it's just okay, but almost as many say it is not enough. So there is a split in this question. Inadequate, which included very and somewhat as an option, included 49% of the respondents. Adequate is the biggest slide with 38%. The largest group feels compensation is enough to function. And together, those saying that inadequate makes up nearly half of the chart, signaling real strain in many regions. Overall, the workforce is holding together, but compensation is not keeping pace to sufficiently hire and retain qualified TCs in the region. On the next slide, we have which of the following funding sources are you currently aware of or currently utilizing in your PSAP or 911 system? So the surcharge received the most at 34% selections, followed by state grants at 24%, followed by agencies serviced by the PSAP, PD, FD, EMS at 17%, and that was followed by local general fund or property tax allocations at 13%, federal grants at 8%, followed by public-private partnerships or sponsorships at 2%, and a few selected others.
This is John. I have a question for you. So I forget, because I did take the survey, but I don't remember exactly how we answer this. Is there an opportunity for the respondent to show that they're funded in different ways? Like how, so statewide surcharge and local general fund or property tax allocations, if that was their answer, how would that be captured here?
This was a multiple choice, so they were able to select if they're currently aware of it or currently using. So we just wanted to allocate what is the overall awareness around these different funding models. And following in the next questions, we were able to ask them, is there anything that you recommend?
Okay.
The next question is, how much of operating costs are covered by the statewide surcharge? And we can see that in the ETSBs, they mentioned that surcharge covers 86, so those who represented the ETSB, surcharge covers 86% of their operating costs, which makes the centers very heavily reliant on the surcharge. And those representing both a PSAP or ETSB represented, their surcharge makes up 63% of their coverage. And PSAP only is 44% or more than half of the costs come from other sources.
What's the breakup of these categories in numbers? How many were just ETSBs? How many were joint ETSBs? And how many were PSAPs for this chart?
So in the beginning of the survey, we looked at the people who took the survey, 45% of overall representation included both PSAP, ETSB, and or 911 system, so those dual roles. PSAP only included 28%, and ETSB, 911 system, or network admin made up 26%.
Thank you.
So I think just from, I'm sure you're considering this, but an ETSB, if you ask an ETSB how they're funded, their answer is always going to be a majority is funded by 911 surcharge money, because that's what their function is, right, is to receive that revenue. So to me, I just want to make sure that we keep this slide straight. In another survey that Illinois APCO and NENA did, for example, we find that generally speaking, 911 centers in general are funded anywhere between as low as 34-35% up to about 48% of their total cost to operate a 911 center, and the rest is coming from, general funds, municipalities, consolidations, counties. So I just want to make sure that these numbers, while accurate from the survey, I think the purpose for Ralph's question is, again, if you're asking ETSB how much of what you do is funded by 911 surcharge money, the numbers could be as high as 100%. Like an ETSB only operates on the money that they receive from a 911 standalone ETSB.
So John, it's interesting that you bring this up because I stopped on this slide and I was like, okay, how are they answering this question? And quite honestly, my eye went to, when we were discussing this with them, I said, if I'm looking at those answering just for their PSAP, kind of it landed where I expected it to land. And so in context to what you're saying is, as we move forward, we need to be aware of what this answer means.
Sure.
Right? And that's what you're saying. And Alicia and I had that very conversation. So I think we're on the same page and had similar thoughts to what you're observing.
It's slightly misleading because it looks like 86% of our folks are properly funded by surcharge. When I first glanced at it, that's the largest one. But if it's only one person interviewed that gave that information, then that skews everything. And on top of that, we're short-staffed in our centers. We answer 911 calls in our centers. ETSBs, God love them. We need them apparently, but they're not answering my 911 calls. And so I don't want to say I could care less how they're funded or why they're funded. I'm here for this strategic plan to see how we're handling 911 calls in the state of Illinois and how we progress from that. So I think the importance should be on our centers and staffing our centers and funding our centers. And secondarily would be the other ETSB side of things. And again, it's no disrespect to ETSBs because there's people in the room that probably represent ETSBs, and I'm not trying to impact them, but I think my primary focus and the people that talk to me are the PSAPs and how to keep us afloat so we can answer 911 calls. So, and when you look at this, it is, if you just glance at it and you don't ask questions, it does look like, hey, these guys are funded properly. Look, 86% is funded. It doesn't matter to me that 86% is funded under that small number. It's what's happening in our PSAP.
So the calls are over here on the right hand.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Alicia and I agree.
I'm sorry. So as the SAB digests this, you're right. Now that we talk through it, I understand it. However, if this is a published thing, if I'm a legislator and I look at this, I might be discouraged from saying, oh, this is a problem this is a can that can be kicked down the road, because right now it seems like they're doing pretty good. That isn't accurate. So I would hate for a legislator to get their hands on this and not fully understand what we're talking through. That's all. Because once we talk through it, I understand what we're saying. But if you didn't know, if you weren't in the know about the separation between ETSB and PSAPs or the ones that are comboed, so I just want to make sure that as a communication piece, this communicates the right thing. Because I think talking through it was already helpful, but just worried about that.
So a couple things. One, I very clearly labeled it draft on purpose.
Right.
When we started this conversation, I mentioned the fact that I edited nothing. I wanted you all to see everything that came out of the survey. I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying in terms of, as we develop what we are presenting to the public, we need to be careful about what the answers mean and what they represent as we move forward. So I think you and I are on the same page. Let's be aware, and that's why, again, it's a draft. This was not presented to create a case as is. It's where we're starting from in terms of the results of the survey. And again, I didn't feel like it was Alicia and I's place to make any edits to the results of the survey. That all needs to go to the board so we can have these conversations.
Yep.
So,
sounds good.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
With respect to the slide, I don't disagree with what Mike and Ralph are saying. However, the question is, what's the percentage of your funding? It doesn't ask if it's adequate. I think that's the part that's missing here. Because if you ask all of them, if in each of those categories or bar charts, all of them, and maybe that, it always works, the survey looks great when we're doing it, and then you get this type of data and you go, oh, it didn't work, or it's not reflecting what we're talking about. Because it's accurate to how reliant we are, but it's not asking the question of whether or not the funding is adequate. That's the difference here.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that some of this conversation is going to result in needing to go back and asking some additional questions of the community. Now, having said that, a lot of these responses were submitted without any contact information. We don't have any, in terms of where it came from, but appreciate the comment, and I agree that we need to be cognizant of that and aware of it as we move forward.
And this is Ralph again, maybe a definition of what an ETSB is versus what a PSAP is, so that the average reader could look at it and maybe understand the chart a little bit better, that, oh, ETSBs are not answering 911, I thought they were. I need to be looking at the PSAPs, or vice versa, if you're wanting to look for ETSBs, for an example. So,
Well, I guess I have a question. So when it says ETSB, that's who responded to the question, right? So that's not, it's the ETSBs, that individual, their opinion or their sense of whether or not everything is funded. And so it's like the ETSB is a 100,000-foot view versus a PSAP, which is a 5,000 on the ground, boots on the ground.
Right.
So to me, that's the difference, is how an ETSB perceives whether it's fully funded or not. They may not know, that they're not paying all for all of that stuff, so they're not paying whatever. Where PSAP may have more information about that.
A clarification I would like to make is the question asks, what percentage of your total 911 system operating costs, as reported in your latest AFR, are covered by the statewide surcharge?
So if I'm in an ETSB and I have no employees, then
100.
I'm good. That's why we got that answer the way it is. The bottom line is something that we're all kind of dancing around here. Is it takes human capital, the most expensive thing in the room, to pay for to make a 911 call happen. It takes an ATSB in some cases to manage it and do all the technical stuff on the backside, radios, GIS. Not going to get into the weeds there. But bottom line, where the money making is spent and where the money making happens is 911. What's the address to your emergency? And that is a line level telecommunicator that costs us millions of dollars every year across the state. And I'm not sure we're yet. We as Nina and APCO have struggled to capture what is that real cost. And as I look at I might as well own it, because I'm the only one in West Central Illinois amongst about 50 counties, it feels like, that responds to that. And that's really, so are we really, that data is based off of a certain portion of the state, and speaking for West Central Illinois, we didn't do a very good job. And we apologize. I know you said 21% is acceptable. In my eyes, not doing what you do every day, 21% is a failing grade for us. So I don't know how on the other side of things, something that would also help me is it also looks bad, but I cover 3 counties there. So it kind of skews it. I'm representing 3 of those counties there. So that might also skew what that visual data does for that as well. So the bottom line is humans cost a lot of money, and they are the most important thing. So if you ask what success is answering, getting somebody better. And then it gets bigger from there. So that's a long way doing it.
Yeah, this is Bart. One of the things, being a leader in the military before I retired, Colin Powell had one of the best comments about leadership. He said, you know you're a leader when people bring you your problems, right? He says, if they're not bringing you problems, there's 1 of 2 things that's probably going on. They don't believe you care, or they don't believe you can do anything about it. They bring the problem to you, right? So part of this will be our communication plan and our change management plan to try to get more participation from these folks, so they understand we care and they understand we're planning on doing something about it, which is what the strategic plan is all about, right? It's mapping out how we're going to take care of their needs. So we just need to help get the word out. It's not just the visual, like Phil said. I'm from West Central Illinois, and I know our guy is very active in 911. So I was kind of surprised not to see that on there, but it could have been a miscue with the survey. Some of these people we interviewed as well surveyed. They might have thought we gave you our input on the interview and didn't bother doing the survey. so we don't know what the reason is, but I think those are the key things right now. We need to make sure they understand, they care, and they understand we're trying to do something about it. That makes sense, sir?
Yeah. And to your point, Bart, the survey is a piece. You know what I mean? Like, they've conducted a number of interviews, and that will not stop. We have continued, because we continue to identify individuals that we think we need to hear from. So it is a piece of how we begin to move forward as our next steps unfold with the strategic plan. So,
a question for your team. Are you looking at a strategic plan for our dispatch centers for the next 3, 5, 7 years? Or are you looking for a plan for our ETSBs moving forward? Because you have ETSBs answering questions in regards to some of this. Or is it a slight combination of everything? And where are you putting the majority of the support on? Are you looking at how to make 911 through the centers better for 3, 5, 7 years from now? Or are you looking at ETSBs?
I think it's everything, Ralph. I mean, and I'm sorry, I know you posed the question to ISI, but in terms of what we've communicated to them is it's strategic plan for 911 in the state of Illinois. And so I don't think there's a piece of that we can ignore. I think that we need to pay attention. I understand that the PSAPs are the ones doing the heavy lift. I understand that that's where a large part of our focus has to be. But I think it's the totality of it. It's ETSBs, it's the vendor community, it's the public. So that multi-year, and our goal is a 3-year strategic plan, and a strategic plan that can be repeated every 3 years, and we'll plan so we are, as we're in year 1.5 or year 2, we're moving into what our next strategic plan will be, but I think it's all of it. So, and again, I'll let you guys, but I just wanted you to know what we've talked to them in terms of our desire for an outcome.
Yeah, not knowing what you talked to them about, I just wanted to make sure I got that out there so you understand there's some questions on what you're actually doing and what the future's looking like if there's a 4. And I don't have a problem with everybody that you mentioned in that circle that you put together. I just want to make sure that they understand ETSBs are totally different than PSAPs and probably have different needs than PSAPs. And so I'd like to see the whole picture, like you said, but I certainly don't want to forget that small chart here where it says PSAPs alone, because that's who's doing the work. That's who's when you call 911, you and your families, that's who's answering it. So,
and remember, we're working on your plan. It's not ISI's plan. We're facilitating building the plan. But you know, after this, we're going to be looking at building mission, vision, objectives for the plan, right? Which includes everybody's input. Being a logistics planner in the military at one point, the hardest part is we call the last tactical mile. Like we respond to a hurricane. The strategic part's easy to do. It's when you get those supplies down to the ground level and get it out, right? And that's the PSAPs, right? That's the tactical level. And the bigger stuff is usually easier because it's big chunks of stuff. That detail getting down, everybody's using a different system or different SOPs, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of things that can be accomplished with this, I believe. And but we need to make sure we have people's input, right? And have big groups of the state not participate.
Well, to add to that, I would.
1 second. Mr. Yoakley, this is Kent James. I'm confirming that our understanding, I'm just confirming it is the 911 system. There is no misinterpretation. It's not just ETSB, it's not just PSAPs, it's the entire system, and that's very clear to us.
Hey, Kent, I think I heard you, but you're very, very muffled. And I think your point was just to confirm that, yes, our conversations with ISI have been the total picture.
Apologize for my poor audio here. So yes, confirming that it is the 911 system that we are evaluating, capturing information from everybody and anybody that touches it, and that will all feed in to our recommendations, which will come back to this board and then further feed the strategic plan.
And just to add to that, Ralph, is right now we're focusing on the current state. We really want to capture across the board, across Illinois, what are the things that are being said by a diverse group of people. So that includes everyone touches 911.
Sure. I'm thinking about this in simplistic terms, and also my phone's blowing up with different things. But one of the things I thought made the most sense was, you know, what percentage of 911 surcharge funds the personnel? Like that doesn't matter if it's an ETSB, a PSAP, or whatever. That question really gets to the heart of it. Again, this is all really the conversation that I just wanted to have when I saw the slide. I'm glad that we're all talking about it, and it does make sense. And I think as we move forward, that's what we're really asking for. I mean, usually personnel is about 94 to 96% of everything a 911 center does, whether it's coming from the ETSB or where, you know, so I think that question, I understand now what you're trying to get after, but that's really, I think, the heart of the matter is right there. So thank you.
Is there anything else in regards to this slide? All right, we can run to the next slide. We have, the next slide is what percentage of your total 911 system operating costs, again, reported in your last AFR is covered. Now this time it was broken down by staffing level based on the respondents. And we can see that those representing staffing levels of 1 to 10, coverage is predominantly surcharge funded at 86%, making these centers highly exposed to any surcharge of volatility. And that's followed by staffing levels of 11 to 25. About 58% of their funding comes from the surcharge, followed by 26 to 50 staff, representing 60% of their coverage, and TCs representing 51 to 100 staffing level represent 67% of their funding coverage. And following to the next slide, this was an open-ended question. What specific changes or strategies would you recommend to make funding more equitable and sustainable? Again, these were aggregated feedback. The first one is raise and index the surcharge. The next category is fix the distribution formula. The next is protecting every dollar. The fourth is build equity into the system. And the fifth is set clear funding expectations. On the next slide, we asked if additional factors for the funding formula should be considered. One of the questions here invited ideas about what additional factors should be included in the funding distribution formula. For example, how surcharge revenues vary or how different PSAPs are funded. And another question was, the other question asked, any additional suggestions or concerns about the overall funding for the PSAP or 911 system? This gave respondents a space to raise issues not covered in the closed-ended items. And so across the board, we distilled it into 5 themes again. The first is accounting for real workload, not just residency. The second is strengthening equity for smaller and lower income counties. The third is fix structural disparities. The fourth is protect and pass through more money. And the fifth is modernize the funding model. And that brings us to our 5th theme, which were questions around technology, data, NG911, interoperability, and artificial intelligence. We have 3 pie charts here. The first is the first one asks, how significant are future 911 technology and infrastructure challenges? This includes SZNet reliability, CAD integration, multimedia call handling, interoperability with neighboring systems. And out of those, about 63% of respondents rated future challenges in this variable as high or very high. 46% high, 17% very high, while only 4.6% rated them as low. The middle pie chart is regarding how significant are future 911 cybersecurity and resilience challenges. This includes growing risks in IP-based NG911 environments, need for statewide standards and incident response. And out of that, 66.5% rated challenges as high or very high, and just 1.5% selecting low. And the third, to the right, the last pie chart here is how significant are future 911 GIS and location accuracy challenges. This includes maintaining NG911 grade data sets, ensuring precise routing, integrating emerging location technologies. And out of this, 50.7% rated challenges as high or very high. 16.9% chose very low or low, indicating mixed views. The next slide looks at data sharing between 911 centers. And in the next 3 slides, we're going to look at the frequency. So it's asking how often do you actually do it? And on the right side is how important is it to you? And so in this slide, we have data sharing. How important is data sharing to you, and how often do you actually do it? So the perceived importance of data sharing is very high, at 77%. This includes people who rated it very important or critical. And the actual sharing frequency is mixed. We can see that only 50% report actually sharing the data. And so there is a 27% point gap here. And so this signals that it is important, but in practice, it is not actually implemented statewide. The next slide, we have data sharing between dispatch systems. So a majority rate dispatch to dispatch data sharing as very important or critical, but only about a half report sharing often. So again, a 10-point execution gap indicates some workflow or interoperability barriers here. The next slide is data sharing between mental health teams. And here we can see that 55% of the respondents said that they rarely or never share the information with mental health crisis teams. However, a perceived priority is much higher. Roughly 72% rated this data sharing at least moderately important. The gap shows agencies value sharing data with mental health teams, but currently in operations, it's not happening. And the next one is data sharing for reports and performance tracking. About 30% share reporting and performance data regularly, often or always, showing that consistent data sharing is not yet standard practice across the state. Nearly 35% reported rarely or never shared this data for reports and performance tracking. So about 65% view this data sharing as at least moderately important, yet only 30% shared regularly. Next up, we have, in your opinion, how could artificial intelligence most help improve efficiency or effectiveness in your center over the next 3 to 5 years? And so a lot of respondents, so we broke down to 3 tiers here. The first tier, which was the most selected, is they believe supporting quality assurance and training is very important, enhancing data analysis and reporting. So these are the most selected. That was followed by tier 2, which included strong interest in reducing non-emergency call load for the TCs. And tier 3, which was the secondary nice to have, is call triage or prioritization, decision support during complex incidents. 5 respondents included language and translation transcripts. That was 2 responses. Automation was included as a choice by 1 person, and skeptical of AI or prefer human with guardrails was the 2 people raised that as a concern. The next slide is what opportunities or concerns do you have about the use of AI in 911? And across the board, there were 4 recurring themes. Trust and human oversight is very important. Accuracy, reliability, and safety is a concern. Privacy, security, and governance are very important. And lastly, operational impact and where AI helps. This included, again, some of the things that we looked at the last slide, language support, scenario training, managing staff fears, costs, and change, training TCs to supervise AI with human in the loop. Next up, we looked at questions 44 to 50, which were around a lot of data, interoperability, and technological performance as a whole, performance across the board. And these were coded and summarized and aggregated. The first theme around data interoperability and 911 performance is standardizing metrics, report, and service levels. The second is interoperability and vendor-neutral data sharing. The third is automation and modern analytics. The fourth, data access, distribution, and usability. And the fifth is training and data literacy. Next slide, we have what improvements would make data use more effective. So again, this was open-ended question. We came up with 5 categories. The first is standardized metrics and reports and service levels. The second, interoperability and vendor agnostic data sharing. Third is automation and modern analytics, including real-time dashboards. Fourth, data access, distribution, and usability. And the fifth is training and data literacy. That brings us to the 6th theme around governance and coordination, which is perspectives on government structures, consolidation, statewide consistency, coordination with 988 and other crisis response teams, and alignment of local policies with best practice. So this slide looks at overall CESA 988 questions, and this was broken down into 5 micro themes. The first is, this is overall concerns for CESA 988. The first concern is inefficient resources and readiness. The second is around technology and information sharing. The third is safety and liability risks. The fourth is training gaps and workload for telecommunicators. And the fifth is misalignment of 911, 988 roles and protocols. And the last slide we have is the themes emerging from feedback on elected official engagement. This is supposed to be 6 themes. So again, open-ended responses were aggregated here. The first is lack of, so again, this question goes over how do we engage our elected officials for more engagement and the perceived feedback around that. The first one is around lack of understanding of 911 operations. The second is insufficient engagement and presence. The third is funding awareness and support gaps. The fourth is policy making without operational insight. The fifth is recognition and valuing of 911 professionals. And the sixth is policy accountability and public trust. There's a lot of points here that we received a lot of feedback on the CESA 988 and elected official questions. And we tried our best to aggregate it in these themes.
Thank you very much. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
You had to do it like 1.5 times, so I appreciate it. Going back to the data and the data collection and the data sharing and the report, what we hear from our membership the most is what's overwhelming about it is that data collection and mining data and all the things that are going to be required moving forward or potentially be required, that takes people and that takes money. I'm lucky I come from a big center. I have somebody who's dedicated to my CAD and my records and my GIS. There's quite a few entities around the state of Illinois that don't have, even in my area, right, that might be a smaller center, that don't have specialized people for those functions. I think if I don't see it specifically in the report, but I think one of the biggest concerns about data is just this overwhelming feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing. It costs money to hire people that know what they're doing. We're going to get behind. We're not going to be able to meet this requirement. And we don't get enough money as it is to keep up with all of this stuff. And so it's just a statement as we move forward. I get that this is a draft and it kind of applies. Our same discussion kind of applies here. But I feel like when I hear from dispatch centers where it's the executive director maybe that's doing all of this, and they frequently will say, look, I know what I know, but some of this is beyond my purview, like beyond my skill set, you know. And again, I always kind of haven't paid attention to that because I'm lucky enough to have a big center where we can hire the people that need to have those specialties. They're very autonomous in my center. Most of the time they're teaching me, right? So I think that's a really big pain point or concern point around the state that I don't feel was necessarily captured in the survey.
And Joe, one thing I saw here is one of the points here is training and data literacy came as a few comments, and that was around many stress that telecommunicators cannot absorb or process large volumes of raw data during live calls. Supervisory QA capacity is uneven. Some centers lack trained staff to interpret the data and conduct structured QA.
Okay.
Need for practical training on how to interpret errors, patterns, and analytics. So that is a point that was captured, and it is a good thing for us to capture and think about.
Come on, Ed.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand where you went with that, but you're talking about as we move forward with this process, just the manpower hours that are going to go into continuing to supply information for this process. Is that what you're?
Not just for the process of the strategic plan, but moving forward, there'll be data requirements that we haven't had before, right? Because we're advancing and we have access to that data and we didn't before, and there's going to be some standardization of what's potentially needed across the state. I mean, we already see that with the GIS project and other things where, 911 centers didn't have to do that before. I'm not suggesting that we're not going to do it, but it's very overwhelming for people that are a team of one or a team of two trying to get all this information. So providing the data for the survey is one thing, right? That isn't easy all the time, and 21% is because people are probably, so I know you're disappointed, but I'm sure it's because people's heads are on fire and they just didn't get to it, right? So, but more down the road, like when we have to supply it. Again, I think it's important to collect data, and I think our decisions should be based on it. And I'm not suggesting that this isn't important, but I want to capture or make sure. And I hear what you're saying; it was captured a little bit there. So that's
There's a lot. We captured so many perspectives, and I mean across the board, and especially for the open-ended ones, a lot of people were very passionate and provided a lot of things. And the goal of this presentation was just to relay to the board and facilitate, to initiate some of the conversations around what's being great.
So the chief's point, the people who couldn't fill out the survey are the same people that aren't going to have time to get all this data collected and digest it.
Yeah. To piggyback on John, it's just not people, it's also our software and our hardware. I mean, my CAD may not capture the same thing his CAD does. And if you're asking for information on his CAD, he can kick it out in 30 seconds. Mine, I may have to pay for it or manually do it. And same thing with my phone system. I have a different phone system than Brent does. So Brent's might kick his data out right away. And so we need to probably standardize what we're going to look for, the metrics we're looking for, and the data we're looking for, and then make sure in the future, all our CAD systems and all our phone systems, and that we start capturing the data that we want to capture. Because right now it's so disparate throughout the state. It's easy for me to say, yeah, I can do that today. And then somebody else here say, I can't do that for 6 months until I buy something new. So it's not just a people problem, although that is important, somebody to do it. It's also, equipment problem or technology problem.
I do want to say this presentation at this point in the strategic plan was very well put together and needs to be followed. I've been through a couple of these processes and this is laid out pretty easy, so thank you for that.
I would agree.
The amount of data that you captured and were able to bring to us was very beneficial and helped me understand a little bit better as well. Hats off. And the amount to get this put into this format in that shorter time frame, as I come from one of those people with my head's on fire, clearly, I was the last one to get here this morning, that's very impressive. So thank you for what you did.
And as you all have any more questions, I'm sure as you digest a lot of information here, if you have any questions, please, you have our email addresses. Please reach out to us. We'd be very happy to discuss or set up a time with you to go even deeper and analyze some more of the information.
So yeah, one thing I want to make note, Representative Guerrero is on the WebEx, and she pointed out, to your point, Ralph, critical for herself and her colleagues an understanding of the difference between what the function of an ETSP is, what the function of a PSAP is. So we'll make sure as we move forward that we're clear with that, especially in any messaging. And I, of course, can reach out to the representative and make sure we're staying in lockstep with her. She's obviously done a great job keeping our concerns in the front of the legislature. So just wanted to make sure that was
I appreciate
noted.
that, and it was good that the slide showed the information it did so that we could bring up some of these topics so she could be aware that maybe she needs to know a little bit more about that as well as us. So I think we learned a lot just from your slides.
Yeah.
Also, there's a handful of secondary PSAPs, and that probably needs to be clarified as well, just so people understand that as well.
Sure.
They're not funded by ETSP or surcharge.
So I'm going to ask ISI to kind of talk about next steps, but before we do that, any other discussion from the board? And I do appreciate and realize a lot of information. I just sent it out last Thursday. Obviously not the end of the conversation, but one more opportunity if there's anything that we want to talk about today in terms of the survey results and what we've seen here in the PowerPoint presentation. But otherwise, I'm going to see if Bart, Steph, if you guys can kind of talk about what's up next on deck. Because again, I echo what several of the board members have said. Thank you very much for pulling this all together. And I realize it was not because they, of course, had to have it read it before you guys even see it. Because we, of course, wanted the opportunity to make sure we knew what we were presenting to everybody. So they've been working very hard. Appreciate that. But I'm sure that they're all anxious, and we all are very anxious to know kind of what our next steps and you know, as we move forward in this process.
What we're working in the state term right now is what we call the current state development, right? So we've been capturing information on how the current state looks like, what you currently do. We've also been doing some current state analysis, which is doing the analysis on the surveys. We've been going out, looking at best practices, looking at other entities, what they suggest being a plan, whether it's NENA, APCO, the Gov 911, as various entities we've looked at to see what they suggest should be in your strategic plan. And then we're going to take all that and we're going to be working on the vision for this plan, which we'll present to the board based on what we got, maybe what the version is. And again, this is a working plan, right? So we need your input. It's not us going to give you the answer, right? Because it doesn't do us any good to give us something that people will help support what they help build, right? So if people have an input for the strategic plan, they're more likely to support it than they would be if we just dumped one on them. In the military, we used to call those thump books. Come in, consultant drops the book on the desk, says, here it is. It goes on the shelf, nobody ever looks at it again because they didn't have a say in how it was built. So we want to make sure we have that. So then we're going to look at based on the input we got, what the future state should look like, right? At the end of this plan, what should 911 in the state look like? And taking the current state, subtracted from the future state, we're going to get what we call a gap analysis. We're going to look for opportunities to improve, come up with action items, those kinds of things to get us to that future state. Does that make sense? Is that too high, too broad? That makes sense to everybody? So it's going to be ongoing because as we do other things, we're going to find rabbit holes that we didn't anticipate that we have to go down. So does that make sense to everybody? So that's our typical flow is that. We're going to get we got your input right now. We're going to continue to try to get input. Like I said, we had 21% response rate, which is typical for surveys, online surveys, but again, we don't like to see that higher, right? Maybe gaps that we didn't capture. And the last thing we want to have is somebody stick of the spokes right at the end of it and we go with the handlers. So, any other questions on that? That answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Just you know, an awareness. We've got another meeting in a couple of weeks, and we can move down that path. But with that in mind, if there are any questions, concerns, things related to the survey results that have been provided to the board, the sooner we can convey those to ISI, the better. So we're prepared for our next step at our meeting on the 9th of March. So just keep that in mind. So we're getting the correct feedback, and we're addressing all of the current state issues we think we should address. I think that one of the things that, from what you mentioned, John, is like, you know, secondary answering points. Have we collected enough data? Have they talked to enough people with regard to that? And maybe not. So maybe have them make a couple more contacts as it relates to that. But anything else current state related that any of the board members think that we need to pay attention to, now's the time, because we're kind of getting to the end of that part, so we can move forward. Anything else on strategic planning?
Thank you all.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate it. I'm just checking the chat really quick because my computer was facing the other direction. Looks like we're okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the draft annual report that was provided to the board with the meeting materials. I guess first I'll say is I'll open the floor for any questions, comments, concerns. Obviously, Alicia and I gave it a little bit of a different flavor this year, which I think is good, right? It definitely needed the input from our new administrator in terms of what we want to present to the General Assembly. It is a draft. We're willing to listen to any questions, comments, concerns. I also recognize the fact that I did just provide it to the board on Thursday. So we'll leave a window of opportunity for feedback open after today's meeting. But I'll open first with are the things that everyone wants to, anything that anyone wants to discuss as it relates to the draft of the annual report.
I like the formatting of it. I thought it was easy to read with the different sections having like an executive summary, like that made it easy and nice. So well done.
I think that some of the challenges that, so back up a step before I say the challenges. When 988 came on, all the PSAPs embraced it and understood that we were going to be part of the solution, part of the legislation. It states in here that it's a lot and it's challenging. I don't think it captures, and I know I read it last night for the first time because I can't read everything at once. I'm not sure the word that comes to mind, but for myself, my PSAP, and obviously we were in cohort 0, so it's a little different for me, so I know I have to tune that down a little bit. But the amount of pressure and workload that we are seeing from this, and don't get this confused with I don't agree with it. It's important, but it's a lot. And I don't think it's clearly captured in this document how much it really is for the PSAP, how much work it really is. That legislation, which is, it was kind of legislation that we did support. However, now we still support, or at least I do, but the work that it is placing upon the PSAP is significant. And probably more on, right now it's on the PSAP leadership, but it's all the way down to the person answering the calls. It's different and change is difficult. And I embrace change. This is a lot of change, and it's a lot, and it's worthwhile. I know it kind of sounds like I'm probably talking both ways. I don't mean to be, because I do see the value in it. But I think it's important that our legislators understand this is a heavy lift for us, and we're not giving up. I'm not saying I'm giving up, and I'm not saying I'm not doing it. I'm not saying I don't support it. But I got one person that spends a lot of time on this. Not one person. My team spends a lot of time on this every week, and because we believe it's important. And I'm not sure what the words can go into this to tell how much that we do care, and we are part of it, and we support it. But this is a heavy lift. Along with that being said, left turn, is it a possibility to illustrate what it takes from this device to the ambulance arriving at your house, so the legislators understand what it has to go through? Because, that's kind of what, I can't pronounce her last name, so that's what she just kind of asked, right? And from this device right here, there's pictures out there. I'm sure APCO and Nina have them. what it takes from this device, my phone, so when I have an ambulance at your house, and the humans that are involved in the technology, in every place it touches something, there's money involved. I think that's important. That would help, accomplish that as well. Those are, I know that's two, one very deep subject and one really super easy. So,
I'll just add on to what you said, Phil. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead.
I just wanted to support you. That's why I was trying to get clarity on what you was asking, because that's what I wanted to highlight as well. The change is great, but it does take a great toll. I mean, whatever it costs to bring, in the agency to help get us to this point, when they pose the questions and ask, and you go back and do the work, it's a tremendous load. Like sometimes what isn't accounted for is the 120 man hours at the cost of those individuals doing the work to support just getting the information for the next meeting and the change. It's a tremendous, I hate to say burden, but it's to fulfill that, those costs are never really considered, even by, the board or anything. Like, we're here, we're doing this part, we're not saying we're not willing to do it, but I'm not the one that has to provide that same information or that level of detail. It's the person that you delegate that to, and that takes time away from whatever other job functions that they have that they're being paid for. And it does, that cost is never really integrated in. So at least what he's saying, if there's some kind of illustration to say, this is what that costs to already currently do it, to make the change is cost on top of that. And I do think that having that in somewhere is important.
Yeah, I think the state and the hub for CESA has always, or learned pretty quickly that 911 would be a big part of this. But I think when CESA was passed, it was a lot about less police response, less paramedic response. It was more about the interaction between mental health care and responders, public safety on the scene. And I know everybody in this room knows it, but I hope lawmakers understand the crucial role, really the responsibility by 911 as much as anything. Now, I'm not suggesting he didn't say anything about that. I know it's in there, but I'm with Phil now that he says it, that it could be stressed heavily because it turns out that 911 is probably, like the biggest player in all of this, it turns out, because yes, people will dial 988 directly and that will happen through those methods, but when they dial 911, all that responsibility and obligation has fallen on 911 shoulders. And if you ask a lawmaker, what do you think 911's involvement is with 988 or with CESA, I should say more specifically, what's their answer, right? Do they have a good, this is a report to the General Assembly, do they have a good grasp on the fact that 911, and I'm not against it either, but I'm going to say it this way, whether we wanted it or not, the responsibility has come our way, right? The responsibility by July of 2027 is going to be on every 911 center to do the right thing. And our biggest concern has always been not that we want to be a roadblock or put up any caution tape. Our biggest concern is we don't want to get people hurt. So I'm just going to share this quick story because I think it matters. When I was meeting with our staff for annual shift meetings this year, we talked about how co-response was going to be more of a thing in the future. We're sliding into that model, and we talked about some of the successes and failures of our transfer to 988. And somebody brought up liability, and I said, well, this is a state law, so we don't really have liability, so I need you to focus on what we're supposed to do. And one of the telecommunicators raised their hand and said, I don't really care about liability. It appears that this is what everybody wants us to do. I care about sending somebody like a mental health care worker to the scene and they get killed. And it was my decision on 988, based on my protocol, to not send police to this call, but to only send mental health, and then that person got killed. I don't care if nobody finds me liable for that decision. I care that I sent somebody to get killed or hurt or whatever the case might be. So it's there. It's all inferred there, but like it's got to be heavy because it's heavy responsibility. And I hope that the General Assembly, I hope that everybody realizes what we're being tasked with. It's a lot of responsibility.
I did not realize the burden and the lift of the line level staff that, when they say I've heard those exact same words. And my center is itsy bitsy spider compared to John's. We are 1% of what John handles. And the same exact words, as well as the embrace of we want to get them help, so maybe we don't have to deal with them so much. But that lift, I don't think of all the survey information of 1 to 10 and 50 to over 50, there's one common thing. That's that exact words that John just shared. And when we struggle to find common, sometimes in the state, because I've beat my head and screamed diversity forever on all the many levels for the small PSAPs. That is the one thing that I've heard over and over again. It doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter anything. That, and we're all in. We're all in. But I'm not sure that it was the anticipated, the legislation was anticipated. We're going to get there. And I believe it. We will. And we already are making a difference. I can tell those stories too. Nobody wants to hear them. But we have to realize about the unintended consequences and lifts that have came out of this.
So, and I'm going to ask Alicia to comment as well. I want to see because what I'm thinking is two different things in terms of what you pointed out. And I'm going to go second thing first and then first thing second. Just got like to do this type of thing. Monday. In terms of the ability to capture the delivery of a 911 call from phone to services, and I can't even say services on site, right? Because it's so dynamic now. I think that's a picture we paint in the strategic plan. I think that, I'm going to be honest, we have to approve this report in 2 weeks. We have to get edits done. I'm not sure,
Agreed.
I'm not sure I can paint that picture in the next week because that's really where I'm at. So in fairness, I can get it back out to all of you for us to approve it on the 9th of March. But I appreciate exactly what you're saying, and we'll make note of that in terms of that's a picture we need to paint in the strategic plan because I don't think it's clear. I would agree with you. And I think that Representative Guerrero-Cuyar's statement of we need to make sure that they understand not only the difference between an ETSB and a PSAP, but really what it means from that phone call to whatever the variety of services then come out of that phone call. So I think we make note of that for the strategic plan. More specifically to your first point, does the annual report capture the essence of the impact of 988 on 911? In the context of, we support it, we did support it, we're still here for it, we will make it work. But is that essence captured in the language currently in the annual report? I'm not sure. We are happy to take that back and perhaps see what we can do in terms of wording of that responsibility that has resulted from 988. And again, you are far closer to the 988 topic than I am, so please feel free to correct me.
Phil and John are as well, as members of Cohort 0. So if either of you are willing to work on adjusting language or sending some suggested language to help capture that impact, because you really have been involved since the beginning, both Nina and AFCO.
I appreciate that.
Captain.
Sure.
And I think you're right. Maybe the words major operational shift don't quite capture how much of a
It's
lift
there.
it is
I'm not suggesting
for 911,
Yeah,
but it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
It's
is.
just that, and it's, I really think it's, if you look at what's gonna happen in the next year in 911, short of the strategic plan getting done and being ready to move forward with that, a possible surcharge increase, this is a lot.
I guess just to support one more time, I want to say, does the language capture it? I want to say no, because it needs to fundamentally talk about the financial support to help get it done. It's not about the willingness of anyone. It's about, whatever it costs to bring in an agency to come help facilitate, it's probably that and then some to still do this, whether that kind of money gets divided out to help too, for temporaries to help with this stuff, because every minute, yeah, John's gonna say, yes, I'll do that, and now he's not focusing on something else that he has to do as well. And that time and money never get factored into getting these plans developed. And it is a huge undertaking to just say yes. So they're gonna do it, but I do think that at some point, that needs to also be made aware that, yeah, they seem fit, of course, to go ahead and hire out an agency, that's good. But then that same type of money has to be put into, everybody who's gonna help get that done somehow, or at least.
So just
Mr. Chair.
providing. Go ahead, Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
Is my turn? Okay. I was gonna say, I don't disagree with what's being said. I also think there's a couple of points. One is legislators have an inordinate amount of things to read and wade through. And so those of us who have worked on legislation before, having to, drill down several hundred pages of a statute into one or two sheets to be able to update legislators, it's their time is short, so bullet points. So I like the new format, but I would say that, keeping it short and sweet because how much time they have to invest in it. The flip side of that is that this document is something that we can put in the hands of legislators, or we should take around when we're pushing the surcharge statute. You have two bills, one in revenue right now, and the Senate bill's in revenue for the 250. So if you're gonna go around and talk to people, maybe not this time around when everybody's there tomorrow for 911 goes to Springfield, but as this bill moves, it's a document you want to be able to refer to. And I think it needs to be stronger on the fact that the strategic plan should be upfront in the fact that we haven't had a surcharge. We're doing a strategic plan because we've accomplished all the things in a 10-year plan from the Stone Carlin report. But also the fact that we haven't had, and one of the things we're looking at is we haven't had a surcharge increase in over 10 years, so that you have something that they can go back and look at, and take a review as this starts moving forward. And I think it's just a great opportunity to highlight a lot of the accomplishments, and we might have to regurgitate something we reported last year, maybe as a chart or table at the end of the report. But this could really easily be a tool for those of us who are going to talk to legislators. Obviously you're not going to get it done tomorrow, but as we move forward, because it's what we do. And you're right, it's hard to, in a short burst for the amount of time that they're going to spend on it, highlight all the work that's been done. But at the same time, a one sheet is great, but if you attach it to a report later on as we push this, it could be great. And I'm repeating myself, so I'm done now.
I just had one more point, just to back up what Chief Date is saying. So, one of the examples, and, certainly have had open conversations with Alicia about this, training, for example, right? There's training that we all think is, training is always good. All our telecommunicators can use training. And I don't think any of us protest that. But to Chief Date's point, depending on the size of your agency and everything, there's, 3 or 4 or 5 trainings right now that also involve CESA, that are required by CESA, or I shouldn't say they're required, but they're recommended by CESA, right? It's a big lift, right? 4 or 5 hours of training for 83 people. Besides getting everybody through that training, it costs money. You know, it's not anything that I put in my budget, and then I should have, but I didn't kind of, sometimes we didn't know what we didn't know. And so I think there's good faith effort going on by a lot of agencies, particularly in the cohort, where we're just saying, yeah, we're trying to show you. And I have to give credit to the phone calls when we're on our cohort 0 phone calls, for example. The hub, Alicia, everybody is understanding. It's not like they're saying, do this or we'll throw you in CESA jail, right? So, but it's also, I think it's eye-opening at times when we say, wait a minute, you want us to do 4 one-hour blocks of training with our staff, and we have, 83 people that get through that 4 one-hour trainings. We have to get them offline to do it. They can't do it sitting at the council. That's a lot of money. It doesn't matter if you're big and you've got 83 or if you've got 15 people. If you didn't plan for it, it's a lift. I don't know how I appreciate your offer to come up with some wording, and I'd be happy to do that because we're all busy and I'll have some time in my hotel room later. So I can do that. And thank you for letting us get involved with that. It doesn't have to be, to Linda's point, I don't think it can be a whole nother 3 paragraphs. I think we got to cover it in a few sentences, or else it'll be lost anyway. So, yeah, we'll give it a go.
I want to say something here because I want to acknowledge cohort 0, while you got to be part of the pilot, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
So while both of your agencies, all of your agencies in cohort 0 shaped what implementation looks like now for everyone else. That being said, you took the training initially on one LMS, now it's moved to a more streamlined LMS. You aren't getting the same support and resources that the rest of the PSAPs are because you really helped guide their creation and what they look like. So I do want to acknowledge that and thank you for that.
Sure.
And I think the word I've used is a little bit of frustrated exhaustion from cohort 0, completely understandably so because you've been engaged with it for so long.
Thank you. That's a good point. And we're the priority cohort 0. You look at the power phone or the total response cohort 0, who was doing it months before us and really was the cutting edge or the bleeding edge.
Yes.
They deserve a lot.
And it's been over a year of engagement. And I want to say to Phil, we do want to hear those stories because not only do you guys have the frustrated exhaustion, you also have the wins, the successes, those stories of your citizens who frequently call 911 and are now going to 988 and getting that support. So I appreciate it. I hope you know that. And I know I speak on behalf of a whole lot of other state partners who see the work that Cohort 0 has put into it.
So I agree that I think that what we need to do is revisit the language and not try and add too much length, but more carefully, concisely articulate the essence of 988's impact on 911. So thank you both for speaking up. I'm sure Alicia will be working with both of you on that. Unfortunately, it is something we're going to have to do in pretty short order. Question for Linda is, Linda, are you proposing, and I just want to make sure I understood what you said. Obviously, we've got 2 things going on here. We've got the General Assembly report, which by statute we have to submit, and it has to be to them by April 1st. So it's a matter of just fact that we're going to have to hopefully approve it at our March 9th meeting. And part of that is the lead time we have to have for the print shop and all of the things, because obviously, as you know, you've seen it before. This is not what it looks like by the time it goes out. We have it put in a very professional, presentable manner, and unfortunately, that takes some lead time as well. So with that in mind, then we also have the strategic plan, which is not deadline driven. It's just driven by the fact that we know we need a strong, clear message for the future of 911 in Illinois sooner rather than later. But with those 2 things in mind, Linda, are you proposing we add some sort of, again, concise summary of the accomplishments of 911 over the last 10 years to the General Assembly report, just to highlight the amount of work that's been done? Is that Did I pick up what you were saying correctly?
Yeah, I think it's beneficial, I mean, because I feel like this is a document that we can use later on and we don't hide, I mean, one bite of the apple last year isn't enough, and you could just put it in the back as a table and refer to it, when you're talking about highlights or something, I mean, it's a sentence, and then just put it as a table on the back page and they can go look at it. But then that provides us as a group, as we're talking to our legislators and trying to educate them, a document that they can go back to or that we can email them as we continue these conversations.
Okay.
I think some of us may have at least a place to start with that we can get to you, not to throw the two people across the table under the bus that I'm looking at out of the corner of my eye, but I think we have something that is a starting point that we can get to you that will help you get that done. So we can give that, in a relative, I think we got a starting point for that. I don't want to say we got that, but I think we have a good place to start.
If you would share that with us.
You agree with me there a little bit?
I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're being kind of quiet, which is unusual, right?
You look at me.
I know.
You throw me a bone over here.
Okay, Phil would be more than happy to come up with a couple of.
Okay.
Hi, this is
yes.
Representative Angie. Can I jump in here real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. And let me just say, in the legislator, Rep Angie or Rep AGC works really well. You don't have to try to pronounce the last name. So to Linda's point, I was going to say, yes, I think one pager would definitely be helpful, right? I've been trying to visit some of the 911 centers up here just to kind of get a better understanding. But obviously the surcharges, right, it affects all of Illinois. And so sometimes the color areas is sometimes what we don't know, especially if we're up here in the city. And so one, I think the one pager is a great idea. Two, I'd be more than willing to immerse myself in this and talk to a lot of my colleagues, especially for that particular bill. And I feel like I'm going to have to do it anyways, just so that way we can all understand. I think the breakdown and the mechanics of a 911 center, sometimes folks don't really know it unless you're in it. And so I can do that as well. And I also would propose that in order to present sometimes to the larger body, I mean, we have caucuses and sub caucuses, and so that might be another avenue too as well. And so I would ask that maybe one of the best things that we can do is, Linda, if you're to present, I'm going to suggest to present to the new Dems caucus would probably be a good way to start. And then we can start seeing what questions, immediate questions some legislators have that this is going to be all new to them. So that way I can try to facilitate those answers to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the feedback very much.
Then, Michael, this is Ralph. Is there anywhere in here that we're talking about our staffing crisis or struggles or issues and how it parlays into, training, ability to train, funding issues, certification, because it seems like it's a common theme where International APCO has a training summit every year on the staffing crisis, but I don't know that we really reflected a lot of that or any of that in this report that statewide we're having struggles trying to maintain our people, and here's some reasons for that. And again, I know you have to have this done in 2 weeks. I'm not trying to create a new topic, but is that part of where we're at today? Is that it is hard to pull 83 people off the council if you don't have fully staffed, and not only the money to do that, but the unfunded mandate and then the staffing crisis. And I don't know that we really reflected that either at all or very well in here, and I'm not really sure where it fits. And but it just seems like it ties into so many things.
I would agree with you, Ralph, and I think that historically this has been a report from the board, and the board doesn't have staff, right? The board doesn't. While you face staffing, every single day, and the various members of the board face staffing every day, we haven't done that historically, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. And I clearly in our strategic plan, it has to be addressed because it's obviously a lot of the concerns that
Yeah, it's kind of
that
part of
came
our
up.
story on how we're here and why we struggle. You throw CESA on top of all these extra mandates when you're already short-staffed, but you have to still do these other things that are mandated. And I don't know that we really sold that a lot through the years, like you said, and maybe I should have brought this up 5 years ago, I don't know. But just reviewing that real quick, I know that's part of our message or our history or, you know, where we need to go in the future, and maybe we can cover it in the strategic plan. But
Yeah, I think Alicia and I can take that back and see if we can find a way, or find a way, I guess is the only way to say it, that would fit within the structure of the strategic plan, both as it has been and as it is today. I don't mean to put off your point at all.
No, I understand it.
But in terms of how that lands in the report, I think we'd have to give that some thought, and I'm not sure if I can accomplish that in the next.
yeah, no, I agree. And it could be money, it could be a schedule, it could be the stress of the job, it could be mental health issues, it could be several reasons why we're having our staffing issues throughout the state. But it is, like I said, part of our story, and maybe it belongs in another document, not necessarily here.
Well, and not just in the state, right? It's a national crisis.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not an unknown factor.
We're trying to
but
get reclassified.
I'm not sure that it's getting the attention, or that we are giving it the attention, and perhaps putting it in front of the parties that we need to put it in front of. So
There may be a teaser or something in here that says, this is part of our life every day. When you give us a mandate through the legislation that we have to give extra training and extra mandates, remember, we're still struggling just to answer the average 911 call, let alone pull people off, to send them to training, to send them, you know, to be certified and things like that. But
well, and interestingly enough, right, like if we pull together some sort of list of accomplishments over the last 10 years, the accomplishments that have happened in spite of,
it's amazing.
You know, even against all odds, you know, in spite of those national staffing crises and state, very specific to our state and as well, probably worth a mention, at least on the one pager when we get to those accomplishments. So, good point.
I like the top 5. Hey, these are the top, you know, as we want to summarize, these are the things that we have. There's a big deal. We talked about text 911 in Illinois is a big deal. We have gave access to a group of people that have never had access to emergency services, hearing impaired community across the state. We need to celebrate that. But there's 5 other things or 3 other things that are heavy to lift. And I already talked about one of them. But staffing is probably another one of those, and funding. You know, and how do we appropriately communicate all the challenges? It's everything's a challenge, nothing's a challenge. And, you know, I hate to be that way, but if we say everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency any longer.
So are you agreeing with me, Bill? I just
No.
want to put that down on record here. Bill disagrees. I gave one up for you just a second ago. I didn't want to.
I had to beg you to.
Well, and if I may, I think one of the things we talked about when we were putting that survey together from ISI was there might be a need for a second follow-up one that got more detailed information, because that wasn't a data capture. Yes, we got a lot of data out of it, but like they said, people didn't have to put their names in there if they didn't want to. It was completely voluntary.
Or not respond.
Or not respond at all. Yes, that's also an option. But we did talk about, do we want to get some more specific data on specific areas? And I think this conversation kind of highlighted 2 of them. One is how much of funding is dedicated towards personnel, and what is our staffing levels right now across the state?
Yeah, I think we need to capture what's your authorized strength and what's your actual strength so that we can show that, hey, I'm down 10, Phil, you're down 6. I used to call David Tuttle almost daily, and we'd laugh at each other because I was down 9, he was down 8, then he was down 15, I was down 14.
I was down
and we were always feeling better about our centers because somebody else had it worse than we do. I know that sounds kind of cynical, but that's how we got through it, and that hasn't really gone away. Maybe it's gotten better in some centers, maybe it's gotten worse in some centers, but it's just part of our everyday life that just isn't captured anywhere. I think it needs to.
I think, you know, he mentioned it in this presentation, if that kind of data could be captured in active dashboards, and then them to understand, instead of just you guys bantering back and forth, that they go, wow, we really need to do something to bolster that, because it's right here, you know, up front, actively, daily. You know, we could, whatever, however step up, I think that could, those kind of data points should be something that, coming from this, we capture and then continue to highlight all the time.
I don't want to break this up because I think people in the room are going to start shooting at me, but maybe it needs to be captured in the AFR annually or somewhere captured. And again, don't change the AFR for Ralph because
I'm changing it. It's already.
Yeah, I'm going to be drunk.
Sheila has already got the edit working. We've got an edit going. We'll just call it the Ralph edit. No, I'm kidding. Interesting that you both bring this up, and I wasn't going to discuss this today because we have not fleshed this out with. ISI has presented to us the strength that could come from an active dashboard of information of this nature. And they're probably sitting over there going, see, we told you we should talk to the board about this. I mean, seriously, this is a conversation we literally had with ISI, and we haven't fleshed it out enough to discuss. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things in terms of, you know, what we don't want to do is create a burden. But however, there is power in data. There is power in having real data, and so a discussion to be had once we've had a little more conversation with ISI is how do we get effective information, it not be overwhelming, that it's real data, real time, that is available and visible and paints that picture very well. So I guess I'll just say more to come on that because what you're both saying, you know, we agree. We just want to make sure we do it in the right manner. So that
can I offer some thoughts? And maybe this is a question more than a thought, really. But I'm hearing staffing, and I understand it, and I believe it. But I don't understand. Is it retention? I mean, is it retention, and is that because of job pressure? Is that because of lack of pay? Is that because of other opportunities? Just to say staffing, that's not going to move the ball. So Illinois, APCO, and NINA put together a subcommittee to look at this statewide, and the answer is yes, right, to all three of your questions. Like, it's staffing, it's retention, it's recruitment. I think if we want action, we've got to define it. We've got to.
Yeah, there's a national survey or study out there that talks about, I think it's Carbine and APCO maybe, I can't remember who partnered with Carbine, but they actually addressed all the issues in like a 150-page document on why nationwide are your centers. And some centers are because of the stress of the job. Some are, they have horrible benefits and they're not paying them, so nobody's staying. Some of them say their schedule's horrible. So they list like 5 to 10 different reasons from the survey they gathered in regards to that. So it's already out there, and they renew it every year on the staffing issues or crisis. Yeah. And it's just a matter of getting our hands on a copy of that if we wanted some details of that.
And I believe, and I'm just trying to think of how to present it.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to take that.
We're going to put it anywhere in a report, anything of that sort.
Right.
We need to be ready to,
Right. Yeah, as I read through it, I was trying to figure out a spot where it should land to talk about our history and our future. And I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought, well, instead of me sitting on it, I'll bring that topic out and just see if somebody had a better idea on where it should land and how to address it. Because you're right, you can't just put in there, we're having a staffing crisis. Although nationally, it's out there, there's a national staffing crisis in 911 centers. And so, maybe we steal from that. We say, according to this survey or study in 2025 and 2026 or whatever the year the last draft is, it states, and we quote that. So at least we have it earmarked somewhere in here.
I would be all in favor of teeing up that sort of thing in the report to the legislature. What I'm hearing is this is huge, and I don't think our report is saying that.
That's what caught me, and I don't know why I didn't catch it the few years before that, but we've been struggling staffing-wise. Everybody has, and we're not really ever putting our finger on it.
I'm not suggesting adding, pages, but something. I mean, it's a huge issue, but we're not saying it is to the legislature. I'm not hearing that. And it's not that.
I think it's APCO and Carbine. You might be able to Google it real quick. I know there was a 24 version and a 25 version, I believe.
It's Carbine and NINA.
NINA, I'm sorry. I was taking credit for APCO. My apologies. Yeah, but I mean, NINA is huge, in the United States, and Carbine assisted, and it's a great report if you get a chance to get your hands on it, or we could probably put it on our website so people can get to it. And it talks about every year what the issues are.
One of the kinds of ways of leading indicators, right? recruiting, my retention leads to the outcomes down the road. Often we get tied up in the calls, the call length of call and all sort of stuff. Those are all leading things that impact that. So, and retention is bigger than recruiting because now you're training somebody twice, right?
Right.
The person
It's a killer.
The person you got to replace.
Yeah. And APCO did the summit, so I'm surprised it's a Nina copy when APCO actually holds the summit. But maybe they join hands and they partner. I don't know. So, but anyway.
Representative Angie, I'm sorry, I just noticed that your hand's up.
Sorry about that. I was just gonna say, I think one of the points that was made is I don't think I've heard about staffing shortages at 911 centers, right? I think for me, I don't know where I came across this, but I saw an article about how we should have those who work in 911 centers be classified too as part of the first responder category. Because I think that's essential. And I'm looking at it from the phone calls and what the phone calls do to someone takes. And again, I go back to the 911 center that I visited here in Chicago, obviously, and that's massive, but just the different stations and the amount of training that it takes to become a 911 operator in Chicago. I think it's a 6 months training operator simulation that they go through. And so I don't think those are not one of the things that I highlight when I go to talk to high school students about those are possible job opportunities. I think I've been more focused on the agricultural part of the state and the job opportunities, but I think I'd be happy to, I would be happy to add this onto my list of like, hey, have you looked at becoming a 911 center and and what the benefits are necessarily? But I think this is extremely important is I don't know if we can share the statistics too about what the 911 centers are. I think I know about the law enforcement shortages, and that's what we keep hearing about is law enforcement shortages throughout all of Illinois, throughout the nation. I don't think that we've ever really had a breakdown of the 911. So I think that's extremely critical too. And again, willing to have multiple conversations with my colleagues about this. I just put in the chat, definitely want to host some of my colleagues to come out and visit the 911 center here in Chicago, but then I have also other areas that I would want them to visit too, just to kind of get an idea as a reference point. Because once we do provide this information to legislators, once they get a visualization of the information that they're receiving, I think it would be extremely helpful. That's all.
Thank you. I think that we have several board members that would be happy to facilitate some of those visits, and we'll take a look at the study that was published and see how we can leverage that as well.
My last comment, if we could get $5 like Chicago, we'd be fully staffed, we wouldn't have any problems. So just, I know we're at $1.50 and we want to get to $5, but if we can pass that as soon as possible, that would be helpful.
If it was up to me, I would say you should all get $10 just to cover everything, right? For now and additional training in the future and what we need. But it's really not up to me. This is why I want to make sure we educate everybody, because I did get approached last week about the $250 from some entities, and they're like, we're having a discussion about it. And I'm like, great, when we're going to talk about saving lives, then, you'll realize that $250 is minimal. We should go to $5. I don't know if they expected that kind of response, but I'm with you.
Thank you. The reason I said that, Representative, because I knew you were on the phone. So.
Any other comments or conversation as relates to the annual reports, the draft annual reports? I realize we are all very busy. However, our deadline is fast approaching. Our next meeting is the 9th. I believe that I'm going to need any feedback, updates, whatever the case may be, by a week from today, in order for us to take all of that, incorporate, and have all of my materials out by the middle of that week, or typically that Thursday, so we can meet again on the 9th. The 9th will be an important meeting for us, both in terms of getting that approval from the board of the report, or at least with only a few. If we have a couple of tweaks that can be made after the fact, that'll be okay. But in general, getting that approval, I think that Alicia and I kind of understand our to-dos walking away from here to get put into the report. I think the other thing, you know, that I'm hearing is not only the accomplishments going into the report, but then the development of a one-pager based off the report that will be an effective way for all of you to approach legislators, but then also Representative Angie to use it as a tool as she discusses with her colleagues as well. So comments back, feedback from the board by March 2nd. Okay. I guess that wasn't really a question, was it? I have to have your feedback by March 2nd. Sorry. All right. Well, thank you all. Very good discussion on the report. I feel like Alicia and I took a little bit of opportunity to give it a little bit of a different spin. I realized we didn't hit every single mark, but I hope I hope
great.
I hope we're headed in the right direction, and we've got some ideas that maybe we need to focus on for next year as well. All right. Next item on the agenda is GIS. I called it a briefing, but GIS information that I'm going to turn the floor back over to Alicia to discuss.
And we are going to pivot very hard to technology over here. So we wanted to kind of summarize and close the loop on the GIS conversation that we had last month. Thank you, everyone, for their engagement. And if there's data maintainers and local data stewards on the call, thank you as well, because everyone knows they got very technical last month. People were using a lot of terminology. We got into the weeds about the GIS stuff. So in the board packet is a one-pager that kind of just summarizes what we were talking about there and what GIS looks like in Illinois for the NG 911 environment. And when people are talking about the hub or talking about the tool, these are all of the functional pieces that go into organizing and overseeing GIS for the NG 911 environment. So I'm not going to go through that. It is there. Share it with whoever you would like to share. If they ask, why do we care about GIS in 911? That is why. But the second page of it is a summary of the conversations that Michael and I have had since the last meeting. We've talked to a lot of data maintainers, GIS departments from different counties, the people who do the work and are actually using the tools and the hub and the processes that are in place. And it summarizes some of that feedback. We talked to small and large systems. Their concerns were different. They really were. The smaller systems are more concerned about the cost and finding the expertise to maintain that schedule. The larger systems are more concerned about the man hours and what they see as overly burdensome processes that are duplicating the work they already do in their very mature county GIS department. So we talked with a lot of people. We took it back. We talked with our vendors. We talked with the GIS committee, and we identified a couple of different ways that the program is going to address some of this feedback, and these are highlighted here. The hub that we talked about, which is the website, has been refreshed, and under development is a submission dashboard. So when we talk about the submission schedule, it's going to be an outward-facing dashboard where systems can see the last time they updated their GIS data and how long until their next submission is due. Okay, so that is under development right now. There is a tab for it on the website, but nothing happens when you click on it. More to come on that. We also discussed participation in the GIS committee. The GIS committee is structured underneath ILGISA, which is the Illinois GIS Association. It's like NINA and ASCO for GIS in Illinois. So we have made a call for interested members to join, and we're really hoping to get representation from some of the voices that we talked to since the last meeting. Special shout out to Dave, who shared some automation tools with our technical people, and there is work in place to see how that can fit into the processes that are in place now to help streamline the process. Or I just said process like 4 times. There's a lot of processes involved with GIS. but kind of streamline the upload submission for those larger data centers. We also talked about planning the tool release. So one of the items that was on the submission schedule is updating the tool after a new version has been released. Just like any software system, anytime there's bugs, anytime there's an update, a new version is released. We're going to work to try to organize those on a more reliable schedule. That way systems who are trying to schedule with their providers when they upload it don't have to worry about one-offs unless it's critical to do the update to the system. So these are all highlighted in the briefing. In the briefing, you will also find the updated submission schedule. And this is the modified version of the schedule that was released in December. So after the conversations that we had with the data maintainers, we made a couple of changes. One of them being the workflow tool update submission expectation was removed entirely. This is now going to be viewed as an IT maintenance task and not a public safety critical task that is enforced by the compliance schedule. You'll also see that the 3 change items listed on the compliance schedule have now moved to a 30-day cadence for every system, regardless of size. It was a shorter cadence for larger systems, but 30 days is the expectation. And when I say change-driven, I mean new address points, changes to the boundary layers, anything that could impact call routing should be uploaded within 30 days into the system. And the other change is if no changes, submit data was moved to a semi-annual cadence. So systems are expected to upload their data every 6 months if there have been no changes of significance in there. And those 6 months, again, we're trying to align the workflow tool updates to a cadence that will be about every 6 months. So ideally, new tool is released. They update their data if there's been no changes, and people can schedule, more importantly, budget around those semi-annual uploads into the system. Again, very technical, and we pivoted hard. Any questions on it?
No, I want to thank you for doing that, because I know that my group in our county was very upset with the I want to say demands, if you will, but this softens the blow. I think it will help out quite a bit and still keep things accurate and accomplish the mission that you're setting forward, but in a practical way that we can accommodate. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I had a question, and I appreciate, you guys, I appreciate the, not having to update it just because there's been an update to the tool and things like that. I just really appreciate the changes that are made. And I still have a question about the rationalization behind updating the address point. If there are no changes to an MSAG or the road. As far as routing goes, I can see if you're sitting in dispatch and that point may need to be, but for routing purposes, what this is supposed to be for, I think you're going to have agencies that are still having to update every 30 days if they have one address point. And that's, one instance where they have a vendor do it and it's $500 every time they have it done. So, do the math on that. I question the necessity of the address point update.
I question the center line / address points because those are significantly different.
Yeah.
Center line change could definitely route.
Is
a routing
yes,
function.
but
An address point, it should.
An address point, if it's in that center line change, it falls in that range and it's going to apply.
I would say that 30 days, there is not one county in the state that's not going to have some address point in 30 days. And if somebody is saying they don't, there's usually somebody that says, hey, it's probably been there for 100 years, and now they want to get mail, so then they come, because we got some extremely legacy GIS data out there that's coming up, right? So, and everybody probably has a touch of an address point somewhere, no matter your size. Like even in Calhoun County, which does not have a stoplight for the record, That gives you an idea how small it is. We probably have an address point in every 30 days. Now, that's not fair because they're new in the world, right? They still think rural route's an address point.
Okay.
It's not. So that's not, just make sure. But I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, you're going to get updates what's going to happen as long as we all be honest. You're just not going to get them. We're just going to tell you we didn't get an address point.
Well, and part of it is, it will default to that road center line
Yes.
if it's within the range. So I
If it's
hear you
within
on
the
that,
range,
and the
yeah.
$500 amount is exactly what I heard from most of the soft systems. Let us take this back to the ones who route it, the ones who can speak to it, but
New
I hear
roads
you.
and all that.
Road center lines are important,
Absolutely.
yes.
Makes good sense, but I think by default, it's gonna route. If it's in the range, new
It
roads,
routes to that.
it's gonna route. It's a new road, absolutely. If we change a range, absolutely. Because you change a range, it doesn't fall in the range, it's gonna.
And
Miss
that one thing can mean the difference between somebody having to do updates every month versus every 6 months.
Okay.
Yep.
Huge.
So, as clearly the person who knows the least about GIS data in the room, I want to clarify my question before I start. Would the desire to be is just we take address point off the table? Or is there a threshold of percentage of address point change? Is there a threshold that you would say should be updated in a 30-day time window?
I mean,
Semi-annual should catch it. You
Okay.
think about how long it's gonna take you to build a house.
Mhm.
We assign the address when they ask see if they can get power to it in the rural environment. Some of these in the larger are subdivided and they're very well thought out and plotted out a long time. I don't have that. We are not seeing that growth. We're seeing, so it takes
So
6 to
and
9 months to get
in
that.
most cases, if
So the
they're,
semi-annual will catch it.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we're talking.
In most cases, there's 10 or more new address points on, whatever. There's gonna be a new road or something
Okay.
like that, I
Okay.
mean, it's.
All right.
And semi-annually, I think would catch, unless we catch a road, which is gonna
Which
flip
is gonna
back
be the
over to
30
30
days.
days. anyway.
Yep.
So like Alicia said, let us take that back and we'll, but I appreciate the feedback.
I appreciate it. Everything else, I know you've listened to us, and I'm grateful, very grateful.
We're there, it's there, it's achievable.
Is that something new? They're listening to us? Is that what you're saying? I'm joking, Michael, I'm joking. She acted surprised.
Melinda, believe me, I'm not going to hold you responsible for Ralph's comments. I'm sorry, I'm just making sure that there's some stuff in the chat, but I am also going to allow, of course, public comment at the end. Yeah, we'll take that back. We'll see if we need to make another slight adjustment. Any other questions, comments? As Alicia said, I took the opportunity to go over to Western. I felt very ignorant for most of the day, which is okay, because I hadn't dove into that world. I'll be completely honest. Obviously, Cindy was very passionate about it and spent a lot of time with that team, and I had not taken the opportunity to do so. And I'm glad that Alicia encouraged me to do so, and it helped me get just a little bit of an understanding. Again, I'm still probably the least educated person in the room about GIS, but appreciate all the feedback from the board, and we'll continue to move forward on the topic. So I want to be aware of the fact that we are beyond. I normally try and keep an eye on when we hit a 2-hour mark, and we have done so. We've only got a couple of items left on the agenda. Okay with moving forward, forging on without a break? Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing enough nods that we will do that. All right. The next item on the agenda is any topics of old business that the board would like to discuss. Okay.
Yes, we do have some old business. So, I know we discussed FEIN and, appreciate your explanation. Just some of the feedback we're getting from our membership, I think some of the panic has died down, but there's still a lot of steps. I think it depends on whether you're from a county or a municipality or what your governance was before, or how your accounts looked before. I don't think any of us disagree that it should be consistent. And it should be, you know, taking your advice as a prior CFO, I think, you know, we understand. There's been quite a bit of requests to extend the deadline for getting this done, particularly because some people are just running into political pressures or whatever the case might be at their level. I will tell you that I had a talk with the Illinois APCO president and Ralph and I this morning. You know, we would, from an Illinois APCO and Illinois NENA perspective, we would be willing to help, whatever it takes, right? Like give advice, put them in the right direction, and, you know, help compliance. If we could come up with a date certain, you know, as opposed to we'll give you another 60 days or we'll give you another 90 days or whatever, or 30 days or whatever it's been. If we could just say, look, we'll get everybody there by July 1st. I'm just throwing out a date, but, and then Illinois APCO and Illinois NENA would help facilitate that by being available so that you guys aren't bombarded. Since, you know, we have somebody who's going through it right now, somebody who has gone through it, you know, they can share some of what they had to do in order to get there. So maybe you would not be surprised. I think we decided that it was probably around 30% that needed to change. I think we've heard from all 30%. So
I'm guessing you have maybe two?
We are actively trying to contact, for those that we have not heard from, we're actively trying to engage them because again, we want to help. I mean, because we've had a lot of good conversation with individuals. We've had people who have brought themselves into compliance or kind of understand their roadmap and have said to us, this is our roadmap, and so we'd like an extension to X date or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I mean, we're trying to communicate as much as possible with individuals.
But I think also the extent of time that you're allowing, I think it would go a long way if we could just extend that out instead of saying 30 or 60 days. We give people ample time because everybody's set up different, as you know, throughout the state. Some people have resources they can throw 2 or 3 people on it today. Mm-hmm. Other people may not be able to find 2 or 3 people or the money to do it for a month or two. And so just to be fair and reasonable to get people moving in that direction is what we're asking for. And like John said, we all understand why we need to do it. I don't think anybody, I guess there's some people in the state that are upset about it, but in general, we understand the compliance issue and we support that as far as APCO and NENA. It's just the timeliness of it. If you could give a little bit more flexibility than you have to some in the past where you've said, we're only going to give you a 60-day extension. If you could either move it out another 30 days or July 1st or something where it's a reasonable time period, because we all want to get to that goal. We just don't want to stress out people that maybe don't work for our centers that are doing it for us. And there could be a cost to that and everything else. So just a little bit more reasonableness would go a long way, I believe.
Yeah, my only comment to the extensions have been, if someone has come to us and said, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and we feel like it's going to take this amount of time, we've tried to work with whatever extension they've asked for. The parties that have just come to us and said, this is a monumental task and we can't get it done, we start with a 60-day extension. So I'm not opposed to, you know, we can have that conversation. If you think that would be more effective to say the new effective date is, you know, what, July 1st would be 4 months from our original, you know, date, we can have that conversation. I just want to make sure that, again, as we're working through this, we have kind of a group of people that we know what the roadmap looks like. They're working towards compliance. And then we have a group of people that just aren't getting, I mean, especially the people who aren't communicating with us at all. You can understand our concern.
Sure.
So if the effective way to do that is for, you know, there to be a date and you all go back to your memberships and say, hey, we agreed this is the date, you know,
I think that would help out a lot if we could give a date. Now, the ones that haven't reached out to you, maybe they have 60 days, but if anybody's reached out to you, I think the date should be stretched out a little bit more than maybe what has been designated thus far.
I'm always in favor of, let's treat everyone the same, whether they've communicated with us or not. If we're gonna say we think our new target date should be July 1st, let's make that a fact. We can send communication out to that effect, and if you all will agree to then help us meet that date, it accomplished the task, right? I think that, and hopefully through our conversations with everyone, we've tried to be very transparent in terms of exactly where we're trying to head with this. So, yeah, if that's what you think the right thing to do is July 1st the date?
I'm comfortable with first, but
It was arbitrary, but I like it. Sounds good.
It's a popular date in my world because it's the beginning of our fiscal year, so it's
Yeah.
New Year for me every year.
Okay.
I get 2 a year.
I think that would be great. And I think we'd be happy to discuss it, make sure we are discussing it at our membership meetings. And
if we know who you're looking for, that would be helpful. So we know a couple of them, but we don't know all of them throughout the state that will have to change how they do business today and comply by the 1st. So July 1st, if you could work with us on that, we could make some phone calls, or at any of our meetings, we could pull them aside and have some chats with them.
Okay. Any concerns? Any other conversation on that topic?
And how will that be messaged out? Will you put something that's 30% to everybody, or?
We're going to send it out to everybody.
Okay.
Again, I like to be transparent with everyone. We'll give a big thanks to everybody who's already made it happen and
Or who's working on it.
And who's working on it.
Right.
Yep. Give them a big thank you very much, and make it clear that and maybe that'll provide some relief for those that are working on it to say, oh, I've got plenty of, I can figure out my plan and you can get it done by July 1st.
Mr. Chairman, I think we might need to talk a little more offline about that internally because of the impact that has on the fiscal 27-year grant.
Yeah.
Because some have already got their new ballot registration and so we're going to have a mismatch there between the old teams and the new teams. I'm not saying that we can't make it happen, but I'd agree to maybe sit down and talk about it.
No, I agree, because part of that was we wanted all of the grants to match the new, FEIN. If we're not requiring that FEIN to be in place, we'll try and get as many, to that point by the time we do issue the grant. So I guess Sheila making a very valid point, part of that agreement is going to have to be that when they get a new FEIN, we'll have to do a modification to that grant agreement. And I realize that's paperwork and probably not the easiest thing always to do is to get another signature on a grant agreement, but it'll have to happen. We'll have to have that happen in order to make our records correct at the Office of the Comptroller.
And it's only the groups that are applying for a grant. So if you're not applying for a grant, there's no rush for that then. Do we know how many people are applying for grants and how many people aren't out of that 30%?
No, we haven't cross-referenced those lists. No.
Will that impact people who are part of the group grant?
Mm-hmm. It will impact the person who applied for it. For the system.
Well, thank you very much for that. If we're going to do the July 1st, it sounded like we were. I didn't mean to make it. That was a really passive aggressive.
I want to thank you too.
I am going to start a list of the times that Michael has agreed to the request of the board, because I'm pretty sure it's not a short list. No, yes, and I think as long as we're moving towards the goal, that's what's important. I don't want to make it overly painful for individuals, but we had to start somewhere.
You got our attention, for sure.
Yeah. And just so you know, APCO and Nina support you. We love you as the chair.
Thank
Just
you.
so you know that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we'll get there. And again, I will say that some of this does stem from the fact that my CFO brain just never goes away. I just spent too many years there, and my interests are protecting 911 dollars. It really is. That's the heart, that's the core of where I'm at with that. So, all right. Anything else on FEINs? Any other old business we need to discuss? Any new business we need to discuss? I will open the floor for public comment if there is any. Would just ask anybody on the WebEx or in the room to please just identify yourself before you begin your public comment. And Chris, I see your hand raised. If you want to go first.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Just had a really interesting phone call in Fulton County on Sunday. We had a 911 call come in. They used an address of 89 Enterprise Lane. Said burglary in progress. It was a third-party monitoring service. The address didn't exist. So we dug on it this morning and discovered that some of our utility companies are hiring outside contractors to come in with those little towers on wheels you see with the blue light on top and cameras. They put them up in their storage yards, which if it's up to us, we'll address anything. I don't care if it's a cow standing in a field, I'll address the darn thing. But some of them don't have addresses for short-term storage sites, sites that they just to drop off supplies, but there's something there. It's a dispatchable to us. So we found out the third-party monitoring service had actually made the address up, drove the little tower crane thingy out there, set it up, called it a day. Just want to get that on everybody's radar that, you know, if you see those little blue light things out in the middle of fields, to maybe check with whoever that is to make sure they actually have an address, because we sent the officer out there and the road range wasn't even close to where he was supposed to go to. So the address not only was made up, but it wasn't even like close. It was supposed to be 13 Enterprise Lane versus 89 or whatever it was. Just something to be aware of. And if you see those popping up in your community or out in the middle of cornfields, maybe check and see. Because, you know, if they were having chest pains or dying out there, I shudder to think what would have happened. So just food for thought. Thanks for coming to TED Talk.
Thanks, Chris. Any other public comment? Yes.
Hi there, Shelley Dallas from Lee County. I'm just, at our general membership meeting last Thursday, brought this up at the end of it for the good of 911 and public safety. Some of the PSLE requirements and Carey's Law requirements, and specifically, and I hate to name an agency, but let's do it in the state of Illinois, when they're upgrading their phone systems, are coming in with no location or dispatchable location information, and bringing it to the attention of the CEOs in the company or the president, vice president. Jack Mabry Center in Dixon is just one example of that. Some of the IDOT agencies as well, when they have several different buildings, they give primarily one address with no dispatchable location. So I'm wondering where we go when we receive 911 calls like that. In addition to, it appears as though in an upgrade to their phone system, they're having these one-button push dialers, where all they have to do is push one button and it dials 911, which is against state statute. And so we receive, let's say, in 1 month, 37 911 hang-up calls with no dispatchable location from a mental health facility in Dixon. How do we, as 911 systems, whether it's PSAP, PTSD, where do we go to achieve compliance or some sort of conversation or dialogue, because I'm not really getting a response from the center itself. And it's a public safety issue. I mean, we're sending officers out there and they're not finding where 911 was actually called from, or what actually is there a true emergency? Was it housekeeping that dropped the phone? Was it a patient that, there's a plethora of all different types of scenarios that could possibly go hand in hand, and all of them come in as main building, when there's 6 literal separate buildings in the complex.
Sorry, Shelley, I should have asked you to come forward because the people on the phone are telling me we, of course, can't hear you. So I'm going to try and paraphrase. Correct me when I screw it up, okay? So the concern is dispatchable location within buildings, especially as it concerns when they upgrade a phone system and they're installing things like one-button activation of 911, things of that nature, and it resulting in they don't have a dispatchable. You don't have a dispatchable location to address the issue.
Correct.
Did I do okay?
You did.
Probably didn't hit the mark completely.
And again, it's not a complaint, it's where do we go?
Yeah,
To fix
to address it.
Who do we, the ones that I've been dealing with are specifically do it state of Illinois.
Yeah, state of Illinois. Good. Yeah. So I think it's probably going to be state agency specific.
Well, yeah, it is, because we have a state agency in our community, and it is through Do It, but there's a person for Do It that is assigned to that agency, and they fixed it for me. They fixed it for me.
Right. I don't want to necessarily put, I don't want to necessarily direct you specifically to do it always.
The state agency.
Right. The state agency itself is probably going to be far more interested in correcting the problem, and will help us facilitate that with Do It.
We'll take that back.
Is that politically correct enough?
Yeah.
Okay, just check.
There's that's how I got mine corrected, is through the state agency.
Got it.
Yeah. Somebody else in the state of Illinois that is having, I think Effingham maybe is dealing with someone. There were a couple other agencies that are general membership meetings that have the same
But
specific.
primarily IDOT locations and mental health facilities, correct?
So far, yes.
Okay.
The prison, I think we identified that one, but they have 24/7 security, so it's a little different.
Yes, we can definitely make some
There's
connections.
anything I can do on my end.
Yeah.
I think we'll be in touch with more information.
Yeah.
The one-touch dialers, that sounds problematic. That's probably a state contract. I mean,
100%.
That's a big issue.
Yeah.
That's
Apologies, I'm just making a couple notes. Any other public comment? All right, hearing none. Quick note, our first meeting in March, the March 9th meeting, will be back at IEMA. The second meeting in March will be back here at the Academy. And then hopefully I won't be messing with the schedule at all the remainder of the year. We should be at IDOT in terms of Springfield location. DuPage location will be available for, again, other than our October meeting. If we end up deciding that a one location meeting is beneficial for strategic planning, I'll try and keep the board updated for that. That would be the only reason we wouldn't have the DuPage location. So just wanted to make note of the fact that we are going to be in 2 different spots in March. If there's nothing else, I will take a motion for adjournment.
Ralph, so moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Phil. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.